physicists just released step-by-step instructions for building a wormhole. Now, of course, like these things typically tend to be, that title is a little clickbaity because we don't have the technology to do anything that this step-by-step guide, proposes. But it's still interesting science, and it really goes into the nature of wormholes, what wormholes actually might be. I think that they might be a passage to another dimension. When you read the book of Ezekiel, they're described as whirlwinds. And actually, a good friend of mine, Jim Wilhelmsen, said, well, imagine if you take a whirlwind and you tip it on its side. What does that look like? And I said, well, that would probably look like a wormhole. And he said, there you go. If angels are coming through these things, higher dimensional entities are coming through these things, maybe that's what wormholes' purposes actually are. So it's really interesting to think about. But we as human beings, we wonder about wormholes, we wonder about black holes. And they are two different things, but there's a lot of similarities too. And we're going to look at some of those a little bit later. But this story said, and this comes from livescience.com. You can find the link right up there if you want to find the story. But it says, everybody wants a wormhole. Who wants to borrow or who wants to bother traveling the long and slow routes throughout the universe, taking tens of thousands of years just to reach yet another boring star, so on and so forth. But it says there's a small technical difficulty. Wormholes, which are bends in space-time so extreme that a shortcut tunnel forms, are catastrophically unstable. As soon as you send a single photon down the hole, it collapses faster than the speed of light. So a common depiction of a wormhole, if you're brand new to this concept, a common conception that you'll see in movies and things is they'll put 1 point on a piece of paper here, 1 point on a piece of paper here, and then fold it and poke a hole through with a pen. What they don't tell you is that's not exactly what's going on. That's how a wormhole would work in a two-dimensional universe. If you had just a flat two-dimensional universe where there is no up or down for that universe, you could make 2 points and then fold the universe, into the third dimension. Again, for any entities living in that universe, they're two-dimensional, so they wouldn't know that really any kind of folding is going on. But that fold could happen into the third dimension, and then those 2 points can meet, and then that would be like a wormhole. So instead of the two-dimensional being having to travel all the way around, it could just go through the wormhole. So the same idea applies with wormholes in our dimension. It wouldn't be a circle. Exactly. It wouldn't be a circle the way that it's depicted in movies. It would actually be a sphere. So a wormhole would really be like a worm sphere, really. But it'd be a three-dimensional sphere, and it would curve through the fourth dimension, if there is one. I believe there is. Many physicists too. The fourth spatial dimension. We're not talking about time here. Even though space and time are interlinked, but it would curve through the fourth dimension that we can't perceive. So to us, if you're going through a wormhole, you just arrive someplace faster than you were supposed to. What's interesting about this is there are miraculous stories that people have reported where they're driving they're supposed to be driving a long time. They're driving across the country, and they end up getting there somehow days before they were supposed to. We interviewed one of our very first episodes of Into the Multiverse. We interviewed Bruce Gernon, who is a pilot. He traveled through what he described as a wormhole, and he was actually able to prove that something strange happened because when he arrived at his destination, the gas that was used in his plane would not have been enough gas for him to arrive at his destination. So something strange happened there. He's written books on this, and he's done a bunch of interviews about it. And so something is going on. I believe that this type of thing is possible, and it's possible that these can be stabilized. But again, I think it's really difficult. I think it almost has to be something miraculous. I think for us, it's nearly impossible to create a wormhole. But for a higher dimensional being, I think it would be a lot easier. Just like we would have a very easy time folding two-dimensional space and creating a wormhole for two-dimensional beings. It'd be really easy. Imagine how difficult that would be for a two-dimensional being to do that in their own universe when they have no concept of up or down. How would they fold their own space? I mean, it would be impossible. And they would only have two-dimensional physics to work with. They would only be able to develop two-dimensional technology. They would be extremely limited. So I think higher dimensional entities can create wormholes into our dimension, but it's a totally it's a whole other thing to suggest that we could do the same thing. I don't know how possible that is. But nevertheless, I do think they exist. So anyway, so in creating wormholes, that's what this is talking about. So it says in a recent paper published to the preprint journal ARXIV, I've never known how to say that, ARXIV, on July 29th has found a way to build an almost steady wormhole, one that does collapse, but slowly enough to send messages and potentially even things down it before it tears itself apart. All you need are a couple of black holes and a few infinitely long cosmic strings. So here's where it kind of talks about wormholes in principles. It says, building a wormhole is pretty straightforward. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, mass and energy warp the fabric of space-time, and a certain special configuration of matter and energy allows the formation of a tunnel, a shortcut between two otherwise distant portions of the universe. If we really wanted to create a wormhole, what we should do is first, even in simulations, but first find out how a two-dimensional being would bend their own two-dimensional space into the third dimension. If we can figure that out, then maybe we can figure out wormholes. But that would be a good place to start if they're wanting to do this. Now this is only wormholes through three-dimensional space. This is not wormholes through, into a higher dimension. I do believe that those exist. Those can exist. Just like if you had the two-dimensional plane, right, and you had the 2 points, but you only bend up, instead of bending it for the points to meet, you only bend it up part way. Then if they travel up there, if they travel up to that other point, then that point would lead to another, really that would be another universe. If you bent it this way, so, kind of like that, up and then back over again, so they would have access to up and down, then that would be a new dimension. But again, they're two-dimensional beings, so any new dimension you give them, you're taking away one of their dimensions. It's just like if you have a flat piece of paper and you turn it up on end, it doesn't become a 3D object. You're just trading, width for height. That's all you're doing. So all of that would have to be taken into account if they were to ever develop some type of simulation to see how this would be possible. But if they were able to figure out a way, even just mathematically, that a two-dimensional being could bend his own space and create a wormhole, they should be able to apply that to three-dimensional physics. But again, it'd be very difficult. But that's kind of what they're talking